This will be the fourth special session of the year.
Lawmakers are looking at a package of spending cuts, even more. Not on the agenda, though. That proposed temporary sales tax increase, that's something the governor's fought for all year long. The state's in the hole by over $1.5 billion. So with the state so far in debt, what happens when a check's written and there's no money in the account?
That's the scenario State Treasurer Dean Martin says we are in. Nicole McGregor is live this morning at the Capitol. And Nicole, what does he think the solution is to this crisis?
We're certainly going to get to that, Kim, in just a second. But first of all, he says $1.5 billion is really just the beginning. He says we're talking more about a $5 billion shortfall. We're joined now by State Treasurer, as you mentioned, Kim, Dean Martin. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for being with us. All right, break down that number a little bit further for those that don't understand that $5 billion number.
Well, the state operating funds are in the red by almost $900 million. They have a $1.7 billion budget deficit. There's a $500 million hole left over from last year they didn't fill. You've got another $1.6 billion that they've already borrowed from other state agency funds. So you put all that together, and we're looking at nearly $5 billion before the general fund is back in the black, basically back in whole.
And come January, you say we could potentially run out of money.
Yes, this 875 that we're in the red right now, the state cannot go past $1.2 billion. That's all the cash we have to lend them. If they continue writing checks past that point, they'll bounce, basically.
And then in February, you say, we really need to know that we're going to be able to sell these state buildings that are on the block, right?
That's correct. The state will max out its credit lines in January. Without the sale of those state buildings, without that money, we won't have money to pay schools, we won't have money to pay payroll.
Would you say, by the way, that you have heard that there are some serious potential buyers?
Yes, according to the governor's office, they are on track to sell the buildings. I thought this was a crazy idea. You shouldn't sell your buildings and rent them back. But at this point, the state's desperate. It needs the cash.
Okay, so we've heard a lot about this. We, in fact, sound like a broken record because we've talked so much about it. People want answers. You go on AZ Central, you see tons of comments. They say we need answers and solutions now. They want cuts. What do you think is a solution?
Well, you can't spend more than you make. It's too late for a tax increase. There's no time left this year. And so as a result, the only way you can do this is either reduce your spending or bounce checks. And we don't want to start bouncing checks, so go back to what you can afford. Don't spend more than you make. Revenues are coming in at 04, 05 levels. Let's go back to the 2005 budget and say, all those promises made over the last couple of years, they're great, but we're going to have to put them on pause until the economy comes back.
You say essentially cutting across the board is really the only option at this point. And you say if we go back to those 2005 levels, you think that everything will actually be solved via that. The sales tax issue, though, is tabled for now. In January, they might take it up again. You're not a huge fan of it. And how much could it potentially help, even if it did go through by the voters?
Well, I have no help for this fiscal year. And next fiscal year, it could help with about a third of the budget deficit. The problem is whenever you raise taxes, you keep people from going out and shopping, which is what you need because you're raising prices. You need people to go out and buy things and to get the economy moving again. Last time we raised taxes, you saw a big crash in consumer spending. Right as we're starting our recovery, it may actually prolong the recession. So I don't know how much of a help it would actually be.
Right. State Treasurer Dean Martin, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We do appreciate it. And by the way, he says November was the most expensive, the most money that they've ever spent in the legislature on record.